What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the ARC podcast. If you are a new listener, welcome to the Athletes Resilience Center podcast, where we talk all things mental performance in sports. This episode, we are lucky enough to have Hayden Seig on, who is a right-handed pitcher in the Los Angeles Angels organization. Hayden has a really unique story that he got to tell, and we're very fortunate and thankful that he opened up with us and told us about his whole journey as to how he got here today. All that includes his time in high school, moving on and playing at St. Joe's University in Philly, then going off and playing in indie ball. He played in the draft league before that, signed an indie ball contract, was in indie ball for like 7 days, and then signed a professional affiliate contract with the Angels, where he went out and played minor leagues. His story is also really unique because once he signed with the Angels, he ended up getting in a car accident that broke his femur, and then he had to basically relearn how to walk, relearn how to do everything, go back to pitching again, and his story is really a testament to the type of guy that Hayden is. He has some really good knowledge on how to overcome a lot of the injuries that he's faced. We go over a lot of his mental prep work before going into a season, before going into outings that he pitches in, and all that kind of stuff. He goes over a lot of the people that have helped him along the way throughout the Angels organization, and really his mindset through everything. And he's got a really powerful and strong mindset, and we have no doubt that Hayden's going to continue to have success and continue to dominate in the Angels organization. So shout out to Hayden. Really appreciate him coming on. This is a really cool episode. So enjoy. Hey Hayden, thanks for coming on. How you doing tonight?
Doing well, yeah. I appreciate you guys having me. I'm excited to be able to join you.
Yeah, no, we're really appreciative for you coming on here. We're excited for the conversations we're going to have. You're out there in spring training right now, so really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. But I can hand it back off to you, like we do with every guest. We'll let you start with kind of your intro. You can tell us basically how you got to where you are today right now.
Sure. Yeah. So before we kind of go into the whole backstory, I'll just say where I'm at right now. I'm with the Angels. This will be technically year 5. That'll be my fourth full year, but I guess year 5 of my contract. So yeah, I'm out here right now in spring training in Tempe, Arizona. I am in back and forth between like the big league games, the minor league sides, doing some backing up, getting some innings in there. But yeah, so far so good this spring. It's been great. It's exciting to get back to the season, get things started. But yeah, a little bit of background about myself, kind of how I got to this place where I'm at now. I grew up in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. Spent pretty much my whole life in that area. Anything that's important regarding baseball was in Mechanicsburg. I moved when I was 8 years old, but
Yeah.
first 8 years. I don't know. Maybe I thought I was going to be a big leaguer, but the first 8 years. So yeah, so I spent obviously all 4 of my years there, Mechanicsburg High School, and committed to St. Joe's the summer before my senior year. So high school ball was always a blast. I really enjoyed the time out there. I still stay in touch with a lot of those guys. It's been great. Kind of to see some of their success over the last couple of years, but we had a really great team before everybody started throwing 90 miles an hour in high school. I
Yeah.
think I got recruited to play Division One at 84 to 86, and now I'm playing like some looks at D3s or something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's been pretty crazy to see the way the high school baseball landscape has changed. But I'm really grateful for the teams that we had out there. But moving out to St. Joe's, I spent 5 years out at St. Joe's. Quite the experience out there. Had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of fun, a lot of frustrations. But overall, really like good time and kind of shaping time of my playing career and my life. Met my wife out there, so we've been married for 3 years. Met her my freshman year. Yeah, I'm super grateful for that. But Yeah, I mean, I could talk for days about my experiences at St. Joe's, and I'm sure we'll dive into it. But really briefly, if you look up my stats, I had quite the rough career at St. Joe's. Not the normal career you would see for a guy who's pitching in Double A. And like to think I'm having some level of success there, but um, the first 4 years were tough. I dealt with a lot of performance anxiety, which I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit. Walked more guys than innings pitched at times. I had one summer ball experience where I really was going through the deep end in regards to baseball performance. That's taught me a lot about myself, but it's also taught me a lot about the game, kind of all of the above. And also taught me, just how to be vulnerable in those experiences, because I think a lot of guys go through it. Um, and so to be able to speak into their experience and be able to speak into their lives has been, a blessing for me, because I know it was quite the mental toll it took in college. But for 4 years, it was kind of like that. My senior year, I was starting to figure it out, and then COVID hit. Um, Funny enough, or thankfully, like I actually got hurt my first game of the year that year in COVID. I had a partially torn, just strained UCL.
Yeah.
And I actually thought there was a decent chance that my career was going to be over. And as much as COVID ended a lot of guys' careers, it kind of gave me that extra year. So I spent, that summer, I actually got engaged that summer, kind of thinking that baseball might be over. Like, oh, let's think about getting married. Like, what's next? And like the same time we were getting engaged, I'm getting calls from our coaches there, like, hey, we have another year of eligibility. Like, we can match the scholarship you got in undergrad. Like, if you want to come back. And I'm like, let's make it happen. So went back out there, fifth year. I got hurt again. First game of the year, I was in fourth inning. I was starting. Restrained the UCL. I felt good all year. First game, I remember just the fourth. I was cruising too, fourth inning, and I came back in. I was like, I think that's got to be it. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Oh no.
So I was down for the next 6 or 7 weeks, and again, like I was trying to build back up, and I was probably throwing like 84 with a little bit of pain. And I was like, man, if I could just get to 87, 88 and just be able to compete for a little bit longer, like just to have like a final year. Like if I could just get back on the field, like have a little bit of a final year, not even thinking pro ball was in the picture.
Yeah.
Getting married at the end of that year, I was like, all right, like let's whatever we got, let's do it. So I finally get back on the mound thinking it's going to be like 88 and thinking I'm just going to have to grind through it. And I remember like the first game, I think it was the first live at bats. I was like back up to 94, and I was like, "What is going on?" Because I haven't thrown this hard in months. And it was. I mean, it was a grind for those first month or two. I was battling some problems with the arm, but I was feeling great in regards to like recovering. And I think that was the biggest question mark for me was like, well, I don't know how long this is going to last, but we're going to make the most of it. So those last, I think 4 or 5 weeks of college baseball was probably the best I've ever pitched in my life. And so I was very much thinking like, all right, well, now I can't really give it up. Like I'm throwing 94. Like I know I'm not getting drafted because I haven't had any experience, but I can't give it up. Let's see what's going. So I went out to the draft league, had a pitch for about 2 or 3 weeks there, had a really successful stint in the draft league. And I knew I wasn't going to get drafted, so I was kind of like, whatever happens. Maybe somebody throws a flyer like a dart at the wall, and they're like, "Oh, Hayden Seig, like let's pick him."
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't think I'm getting drafted, so didn't get drafted. And I basically went and was like, "Let's play indie ball." I got a couple different calls and decided that American Association in Fargo was the best option. So I went out there for more or less like 10, 11 days and my life for 11 days and pitched out of my mind. I don't even know what happened. All of a sudden, I was just like in professional baseball and still having success. And I was like, this is like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know if this is like, I'm getting lucky, but I'll take it. Like, so I did that. And then, one Monday I got a call from the Angels, said, hey, are you still looking to sign a contract with an affiliated team? And I was like, I think so. So I signed with them. A couple of days later, was headed down to Arizona, and that's where kind of my pro ball career took off. It didn't take very long for that roller coaster to come kind of crashing down, literally. So I was 5 days into my professional career when we were on the way to the field, and unfortunately got into a car accident. And Yeah, actually broke my femur, so I hadn't even thrown a pitch yet for the Angels, and I was on the IL dealing with a rehab of a broken
Man.
femur. But in hindsight, like in scope of things, like to be honest, it was a blessing to be alive. It was a blessing to be able to walk, like to be alive. When I look back at the accident, I really do like see like my full life flash before my eyes. Like there was it was pretty crazy. Like I mean, it was crazy. Nothing that our driver did wrong. So I've always said that. Like I'm so grateful for the way that the Angels have cared for me through that. There's nothing that they did wrong, but it just happened to be the circumstance. And my leg took a beating.
Yeah.
It's taught me a lot. Again, just like performance anxiety did in college. It's taught me a lot about how to reshape myself and battle through those experiences. Times in pro ball where I thought, this was the end of my career. There's been times where I've battled the mental demons of why am I doing this? What am I doing? I've got a wife who she is amazing and extremely supportive, but she's also at home, so it's not easy to be away. So there's times where it's just like, what am I doing? Like I love this game so much, but also like there's a lot of other things that I'm passionate about, which again I'm sure we'll get into more of that. But I had the opportunity to go to big league camp last year, which I never thought would be a thing until like this last year. Things started again to click and feel great. And the opportunity this year, whether I start in AA or AAA, we'll find out in a couple of weeks. Make the most of it. But yeah, the 4 years of professional baseball have been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of good experiences, a lot of, I don't want to say bad experiences, but like learning experiences. When I say bad, I mean more like the results haven't been there. But again, like I've done just enough and been grateful enough to still be around and learning how to need to develop. And hopefully one day you put the consistency together to make it to the big leagues. So that's always the goal. It's always the dream. So that's kind of what brings me here now. I'll leave it at that.
It's amazing.
You got quite the story, man. That's great. So thank you for sharing all that. I appreciate that. And there's a lot we're going to unpack there and talk about. Sure. But just to get the ball rolling here, let's go back to your time at St. Joe's, because you alluded to it, right? The performance anxiety, right? Yeah. Can you go into a little bit of a description of what that felt like for you and kind of when that hit? And you're speaking my language. Listen, you said control problems. My freshman year, I had 6 innings, 13 walks, and I still pitched throughout my 4 years, but again, control issues always haunted me. Matt's laughing, he knows. But
we know.
But then, right? So then you also talk about you come back for a 5th year, and it was kind of a 5th year that you didn't really anticipate getting until COVID happened and your season got cut short and all that stuff. So my question is twofold. Can you describe the performance anxiety that you faced your first 4 years, kind of how that messed with you mentally a little bit? And then can you kind of dive into, I think it's interesting that you get this fifth year that you weren't really anticipating. Do you think that alleviated some stress and maybe a little bit of that performance anxiety? Because it was like, this is like house money right now. This is not my time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The performance anxiety, is something that like as a high school Hayden like would have never thought of experiencing. Like, I think one of the things that a lot of guys at the professional level, like at college baseball level, is like you're one of the better players in your high school team, and so like whether you have your best day or your worst day, you're probably still having some level of success.
Yeah,
as long as you're throwing the ball over the plate, and I really didn't have problems with that in high school. I pinpointed to one experience in college. I don't know for sure if this is the exact experience that started it or not, but I look back on it and think that this could have been like the trigger that set me off. My freshman year, I came out in Pepperdine, my first outing in Pepperdine, 3 innings, gave up, I don't know, it may have been like 3 innings, 3 strikeouts. I'll probably get it wrong, but it was 1 run. It was a 1 hit. Guy hit an absolute nuke off of me. So be it. Welcome to college baseball. Like, but 3 innings, 1 run, like my first time out in the college mound, like I'm not complaining about that. And unfortunately, the team was struggling. We had some pretty high expectations on the team that year. Some really good pitchers, or not just pitchers, position players with Deion Stafford and Tim Brennan, both very successful guys that played a little bit of pro ball. Tim's still playing. But we had some bright spots in the team, and we had some high expectations. And I think we started the year like 0-11. So like we were like, man, what is going on? Like this is not who we thought we were going to be. But in the midst of that losing streak, maybe game 7 or 8, I came in for a game, I think in the 6th or the 7th or 8th inning, and we had to lead. And I just remember the 9th inning blowing that game. Man, it was an experience that like I had never experienced before. Not in the sense of like blowing a game. I probably had done that before in travel baseball or whatever. But like when you're on a team that has these high expectations, you haven't even won a game yet, and all of a sudden it's like you have the chance to close the door and win the game, and you blow it, and you're a freshman in college, and you don't know your place on the team, and the next thing you know, it's like you're questioning your place on the team, and if guys, still like you, like if you're trying to make a name for yourself. And I think,
Of course.
I didn't really realize it then, but I mean, ever since then, I really didn't have the same success that I would have desired. I threw to a lot of like 5 or 6 ERAs. And then the experience where I really realized that I had performance anxiety was my summer ball after sophomore year. I went out and played, and I threw, I think, like 30 innings and had like 40 walks. And there were times where it was just like, man, there was one experience where I threw like probably a 30-pitch inning. I think I walked the bases loaded to start the game, first 3 batters. And I was trying to throw fastballs, and I was like, I have no idea where this ball is going. Yeah. I was like, I have no idea. It wasn't like I was spraying it to the backstop or thing. I just couldn't throw it for a strike. So like it wasn't like it was erratic, but it really just wasn't strikes. So I started just throwing curveballs, and I threw curveballs for strikes, and I have no idea. I don't even throw a curveball anymore, but I was throwing it. It's like, I have no idea how. I wish I could figure that out again. Yeah, that was the only pitch that I could throw for strike. And when I came off that first inning, I think I ended up getting out of it. I gave up like 1 run. I came out into the dugout, and I could just feel my heart racing. And I was like, first of all, this is not fun. Second of all, I'm like, what is happening? Like, I throw a bullpen, I know how to throw a strike. I get into a game, I have no idea how to throw a strike. Right. All these people are like, you have all the talent in the world, like you have all the potential, you could be a professional baseball player, you could do these things. And I'm like, well, if you go look at that, like that's not going to tell you that answer.
Of course.
So there was a lot of just like, to explain it simply, like I felt lost on the mound. My heart would race. I'd be like, I don't know what's going on. I had no conviction. I had more like, I was just scared. I was like, I don't know why. I was scared. And so that was like the experience of performance anxiety that I had to battle through a lot, and just some just negative thoughts that would go through my head about just honestly, it wasn't even negative thoughts about like doubting myself as much as it was I couldn't even visualize myself throwing a strike. Like, so like if I was sitting there like thinking, I was like, the only thing I can think right now is a ball cutting out of my hand and missing like glove side. I was like, I couldn't even imagine what the feeling was like to throw a strike.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a lot of the performance anxiety. And I'm sure, again, like we can dive into that even more. Like, what does that look like for me? I went to a sports psychologist, a great guy that I actually talked to last year as well. I'm sure we can get back into that a little bit, but I went to a sports psychologist that just helped me to understand, like, the biggest thing that I learned is like our thoughts have no meaning. Like, to be honest with you, like even if my brain like is struggling to like see the ball like cut out of my hand or things like that doesn't dictate what's happening. And I think like we have positive and negative thoughts that we declare in our head as positive and negative thoughts. And yeah, we can. I personally believe. Now I know there's some psychologists that do and don't agree with this. There's the positive thinking. There's the thoughts literally don't matter. And I feel like I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I don't think we can control a lot of the thoughts that pop into our heads. I think we can probably start to influence them as we give certain ones attention and certain ones not. But I also know that I have experiences where thoughts just pop into my head, and I'm like, where did that come from? I don't believe you, but if you say it to me enough, I'm going to try to believe you. And I'm like, where did that come from, right? And a lot of times it's just our mind. It's running. And I realized that, like, I'm not choosing to think that, which means that I can also then choose what kind of power is in that thought. So, like, that popped in my head. Am I going to give it the power? Am I going to recognize that, like, I'm not choosing to put it there, so, like, it doesn't mean anything? Sure. And that took a lot of work for me to really believe that on the mound. It took a lot of work to recognize that, if I'm 2-0 on a guy, it doesn't mean I'm going to walk him. Like, if I'm 3-0 on a guy, it doesn't mean I'm going to, like, it doesn't mean I'm going to walk him. If I gave up if I gave up a home run to the last guy, like it has zero effect on this next pitch. Because like when I was dealing with performance anxiety, there was this constant battle between pitch after pitch, and they would just snowball, right? It was just like it would constantly go downhill because I mentally had thought that one pitch was affecting the next, and it would just lead to this like really negative outing. But I had to learn, like with time spent with the sports psychologist and things like that, really to understand like the independence of events. You know, like the fact that when I pick up this ball, whatever just happened literally has zero impact on what's happening next. It's easier said than done. I know we hear that all the time. Like, I had to really understand and believe that like the anxieties that I'm experiencing, those thoughts that are coming into my head, one, where are they? Like, where are they coming from? Two, they really do not dictate what's about to happen. They have no meaning. And then three, if something negative just happened, it really has no effect on what happens next.
Right.
So thankfully, that was a lot of my junior year battling through that. I had an okay junior year. It wasn't great. I had an okay year. And then my senior year, yeah, I had mentioned that I got hurt. And then like you had asked the second part of your question, you know, the fifth year was like house money. And I think this is where the performance anxiety becomes interesting, right? Because I was a fifth year. There really weren't a lot of fifth years. I was one of the older guys. I do believe this. I do believe that the more prepared you are for something, the more confidence you can have.
Agreed,
and I spent
100%.
the last year and a half preparing in ways that I had not prepared before.
Right.
And I think a lot of those first 3 years, I didn't know what was wrong. Mechanically, I was out of whack. I didn't know what was going on. I'd spent a lot of time training over those 2 years, that 2019, 2020, and then into 2021. I spent a lot of time training, learning my body. I'm a very analytical guy, so the more time I spent learning how to be coached and how to coach like mechanical things. A lot of people think you think about mechanics, that's bad. For me, it was like, no, this unlocks things. Like it allows me to understand what's going on.
Agreed.
And when I did that, I was able to put the preparation in and then go play. And it almost unlocked this new level of confidence to know that when I step on the mound, I've done the work that I need to do to be confident that if that last pitch was a ball, well, I do know what a strike is. I do know what it feels like to throw a pitch that doesn't cut, you know, glove side and miss by 2 feet. So take that and then also put it, you know, I took that into my first year, my first start, and then I got hurt. But it was those next 6 weeks that were really, when you talk about house money, it was those next 6 weeks where I really like kind of thought about house money. Because I do think that like going into my fifth year, I was like, all right, put together a good year here and we might get signed. But after those 6 weeks of being hurt, I kind of threw that idea out the window. I got COVID during that time as well. And I remember I was home and I sent a text to one of my coaches outside of St. Joe's, and I said, or even my dad, I sent it to multiple people. And I said, you know, I'm so grateful for the opportunities I've had to play baseball. I said, if I make it to the major leagues, if I make it to pro ball, great. I said, realistically, that's like a long shot right now. All I really want to do is go out there, know that I've given everything that I have, give it one last shot to like help this team win, help us to like just have fun and play baseball, and then whatever's next is next. You know, I have a lot of passions outside of baseball, and so for me, there was just this freeing sense of like the weight of professional baseball didn't feel like it was on my shoulders. It was like, if that happens, fantastic, but throwing 88, that's not going to happen, so don't even worry about it. Just go compete. And then all of a sudden, when things started to have success, you know, there was like, okay, now we're starting to move towards professional baseball. Is there a chance there? But I had already experienced, like, I'm just kind of playing on that house money. I've experienced that, like, this weight that can kind of feel very burdening, where it's like, oh, all these people are evaluating me and these things like that. Like, you just realize that none of that, again, it goes back to the performance anxiety. None of that matters on your performance. Like, unless you give it meaning. Like,
right.
I know how to throw a baseball. Like, I know how to throw strikes. And so that fifth year, I just tried to take that burden off my shoulders, say it'll all take care of itself. And let me just go out and enjoy it and have fun and see what we can do. And it's funny because I'll add one last point to that, is that was my experience in college ball, and then I went out to the draft league in indie ball. And I knew at that point, I was like, all right, I'm starting to have the success, but I know I'm not going to get seen unless I try to throw this ball as hard as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Like, if I can throw like 95, 96, then maybe we got a shot. So the funny thing is then you turn the brain off even more. You know, all these people are mad at facilities for telling guys to throw hard and do these things and not throw strikes. Well, what I realized was when I tried to throw as hard as I could, I threw more strikes than ever before. I went out into the draft league. I went out into indie ball, and I literally, every time I stepped on the mound, I said, I am throwing this ball as hard as I possibly can. I was like, I don't care if it's 2-0. I don't care if it's 3-0. Like, you're going to see a number on the radar gun. And so I went from sitting like 92, 94 in college to sitting 94, touching 96 for the first time in my life.
That'll play.
It's working. Like, why stop? So all these things that these people yell at in their facilities, stop trying to throw the ball hard. I'm like, you know what? Like, that unlocked everything for me. I'm turning the brain off, throwing this ball as hard as I can. Good luck. Here we go.
That's awesome.
You're preaching right now. Everything that you just said, I swear Matt and I have talked about maybe 3,000 times. It's like, it's crazy on the same wavelength. But there were 3 takeaways that you kind of described there that I just kind of want to reiterate. Yeah. One was the ideology of not being too negative and not being too positive, right? There's a book by Trevor Moawad, who is Russell Wilson's mindset coach. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he has this book called Getting to Neutral, right? And it's an unemotional, very objective way at looking at results and then evaluating what you do next. So in the moment, right, you throw a ball and you're like, what your mind might tell you is, shit, am I going to throw another ball?
Yeah.
But in the moment, it's, no, I get the ball back, boom. Like you just said, right? Confidence comes in preparation, which I said on this podcast like 3 weeks ago. That's like one of my favorite quotes. You know you've put in the work where that next pitch has nothing to do with the previous pitch, right? It's an objective, unemotional fact, right? You've done this repetition thousands of times. You've got to where you need to be. Like, the idea of staying neutral in that moment is huge, like enormous. So you brought that up, and I think that's really cool. You said like the idea of letting the mind go and just throwing the shit out of the baseball is also another one I completely agree with. Like, I think if you go back, even with Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, the best when you're hitting is when you're fearless. You're swinging hard, not like I'm just going to go crazy, but you're swinging with a purpose every at bat. And on the mound, even though you're like, I'm throwing this thing as hard as I possibly can, like every pitch, you still have a purpose. And it's not like, you know, mechanically you put in so many reps that you're fine-tuned and you're there. But once you get on the mound, you're competing. I'm clearing all of the work that I put in. That's confidence in its own, because it's like, I don't need to focus in game on my mechanics because all the work that I put in is presented right now. And that's like ready to go. And I think that's also really cool. But now that you went through that, right? Like you're just talking about, if you could go back to college you before your 5th year, what's some advice you'd give yourself? Like, and again, not even just like the cookie cutter, like let's stay neutral, let's do this, like you specifically, because obviously everyone takes information in differently. Would it be just clear the brain and throw as hard as you can, or are there some intricacies to what you would kind of tell yourself and how you'd approach it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I don't think I ever would have thought in those moments to clear the brain and throw hard, and I think that would have been helpful, because I think a lot of times we're told to take the foot off the gas.
Yeah.
And, you know, just slow it down. You know, it's easy. It's better to throw an 88 mile an hour strike than a 92 mile an hour ball. I'm like, yeah, but you know what's even better is a 95 mile an hour strike. But there's a few things. One that I would definitely say is, you look back on those times, and one of the things you have to remember, this would be like early college days, Hayden, would be like, just know that like you are loved by the guys around you.
Yes.
No matter what the performance is around. And I battle that in pro ball too, especially because a lot of our worth comes from our performance.
Yes.
But we've got coaches that, you know, have a lot of love for us and care for us and want to see us perform. And while at the end of the day, they'll have to make a decision to either cut you, move you up, call you up to the big leagues, or stay where you're at, like depending on your performance. I really do, and I'm grateful for this within the Angels. I really do believe these guys like care deeply about us. I feel like I see that even with the college guys that I'm still really close with is like it didn't matter my experience those first 4 years. Like those guys love you, like those guys care about you, and it's not based upon how well you're performing on the field. And if there are guys that like that's going to affect a relationship, then it's like, is that really it? Like, is that really the friendships that you need? And I don't think that's the culture we created at St. Joe's, but it was the one that I believed in my head, especially to like early years Hayden. I would say the later years, that fifth year, if I could say it's year 3. Year 4 is a little bit of a wash because of the injury, but year 3 is, just to know that like whatever happens, is like I say, I'm a very faithful guy. Like I'm a strong Christian guy, like that really believes that there's like a plan to a lot of what happens.
Yes.
I know that's like very like cliche, like God has a plan, like we say those things, but it's just like, I think if I look back when I decided to let go of this idea of what I had planned in my 5th year, whether somebody would say that's God, whether that's somebody would say that's your brain, like that's telling you when you have these plans in your head about how things are going to work out, I think it only adds more pressure. And so like the 5th year Hayden would look back at year 3 and be like, Hayden, like recognize that you do believe that God has a plan, and like let that burden off of your shoulders to know that like you don't need to have the plan perfectly in place. And here's, by the way, even if you make it to the big leagues, even if you make it to pro ball, it's not going to happen the way that you thought it was going to happen.
Definitely not.
You know what I mean? So like take the burden off your shoulders to say, if I don't strike out a guy per inning, if I don't throw 70 innings this college year and get 10 wins, or I guess it'd be even more than that, but like 10 wins or something like that, but like it's not going to work out. Because the funny thing is, year 5 Hayden goes, this was not what I expected to happen, but look at this, it's worked out. Like, what I mean? So I think I would look back at all of the years, and I have to tell myself that every single year. I look back at my last season. I'm sure we'll get into the pro ball side, but just recognize that like this plan that you had, guess what? It's probably not going to work out the way that you think it should work out. That doesn't mean it's not going to work out. It's just that when we have this mindset of like, this is exactly what I have planned. I'm going to go from AA to AAA to the big leagues. Last year, I'm 3 months in the season with like a 1 ERA, and I'm like, we're on our way. And then all of a sudden, it's like, what happened? Now I've got a 6 ERA in the last 2 months, and I have no idea. Like, well, all of a sudden, that plan that I had originally had, you can throw that out the door. And like, it's like, okay, are my goals and the things that I've set, if I failed those, it's like, has the plan failed? Have you failed as a person? Like, I don't think so. And like, I'm a big goal setting guy. Like, I love reaching for goals. But the question for me is like, how do you respond when those goals aren't hit? Because the reality of our lives are like, we're going to set goals that are going to be hard to reach. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't set them. And it also doesn't mean that you should be discouraged when you don't hit them. So like, it's just like, what is the process of getting there and the timelines that we put on it? Like, we recognize that like that timeline, let's throw the timeline out, like, I mean, look at how many guys, when I played in Fargo, us Philly guys would probably know him. My head coach was Chris Coast, who wrote the 33-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
And like, he what was his timeline? Like, you know what I mean? Like, he could have given so early. And I'm grateful to have gotten to play for him, although it was such a short time. But I just think I go back to that, like, this plan that we have, this timeline that we have, just trust that things are going to work out, and like, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. It's very cliche, but like, I think it's like, we have to believe it. Like, even the goals that we don't reach, like if you don't reach, set those high goals. If you don't reach them, you're going to be okay. It's going to continue to push you forward and challenge yourself,
And as pitchers, you said it perfectly. We put so much of our self-worth into our results, not necessarily our process. And I think you touched on an amazing aspect here. I was literally just talking with a college pitcher this week, and we were going over like some of the results that he had gotten are not what obviously he anticipated or wanted. But at the end of the day, he's a 5th year guy. And what are your teammates, what are your coaches going to remember? none of them are going to go, oh, remember that year that Hayden had a 1.2 ERA and struck out 107? No. What they're going to remember is the type of teammate you were, the work ethic that you had, your processes every day when you go to practice, because that's the legacy you carry on to the people at St. Joe's beyond you, right? Like, the underclassmen, when you're a fifth-year guy, if you go out and you dominate, but you're not very receptive and helpful to them, you don't work very hard. You're just kind of going out there and doing your thing, right? You're like focused on your own personal goals and not the team. No one's going to vouch for you or kind of look back and be like, that's a guy that really motivated me and I really enjoyed playing with, right? And overall, at the end of the day, it's the impact that you do make on people. It's not the results that you set forth. But again, I mean, I was in the same boat as you my freshman year when I went to college, right? I had really lofty goals, which are good, right? But also, as a freshman, I don't think I knew how to put the correct processes in place to reach them, right? So in my head, I put in, I'm going to be the rookie of the year in our conference, right? Like, that was in my hat. I looked at it every day. It's like, that's the goal. I'm gonna do this. And when I went out my first start, I think I let up 5 runs in 2 innings or something like that, got pulled, and I think I got 4 more innings the rest of the year. So like you just said, right? Plan does not get executed. Does that make my freshman year a failure? Probably not, because of what I learned from that and how I was able to grow after that. So it's like you said perfectly, nothing goes the way that it's supposed to go, right? And if it did, everyone would go play professional baseball because it'd be like, oh, great, I'll go play at St. Joe's for 4 years and then I'll get drafted and then I'll play in the minors for 3 years and then I'll go play in the MLB and pitch for the Angels. But like, I mean, there's no growth in any of that. That's just a straightforward path. That's just walking down the street. So you gave some awesome knowledge there, and yeah, I appreciate that perspective. That was cool.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It's something that I wish younger me knew. It's also something that I really would love to be able to teach more. To like kids from my experience. What you said about impacting people, I think it goes on to the professional game as well. And I think that's one of the hardest parts in pro ball is to become very selfish. This is me, my performance. Whatever I do is what gets me to the next level. Whatever I do is what determines my paycheck that's coming in. It's all of those things. And again, like to kind of speak to like from a faith perspective, but I also think applies to people that may not necessarily agree like religiously with me. It's like when I say like from like a scripture perspective that says you can gain the whole world and lose your soul. I think about that in like baseball as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, I made it to the big leagues, but if it was all about me and I had zero positive impact on the people around me, what good is it for you to have all the money in the world and like to have the worst image? You know what I mean? Like to have this image of just like people that see you as like a really selfish guy who that's all you care about. And it's just like for me, it's like I was asked a question last year in an interview with our AA broadcaster, and I don't know the exact words of the question, but it was basically like, if your career were to end right now, like, would you be proud of what you accomplished? And it's like, I sat there and I thought about that, and it gave me a new perspective, I think, on baseball. And I said, for all that I've been through and all that I've learned in this game, like, I do desire to make it to the big leagues. But if my only focus is to make it to the big leagues and make a lot of money, and unless that happens, I can't be proud of what I've accomplished, then I think the whole idea of how I'm viewing baseball is completely wrong. Yeah. It would be a dream come true to pitch in the big leagues, and I hope it happens this year. Like it's a goal that it goes back to the goals. It's a goal that I have. It's something that I strive for and I train for every single day. But I can't lose sight of the present. I can't lose sight of the now, and the fact that I have relationships that outside of baseball I would never have. I've met guys from all across the world, all across the country. And these are brothers and guys that I'll be around, talk to for the rest of my life. And like, not only that, but if on the selfish side, if my career were to end right now, I know that I've put every foot forward to make the best out of what I can do. And it's like you can't not be proud of that. You can't I've done what I can. And if it's enough, it's enough. And if it's not, I did what I could.
Right.
So just kind of touch on what you shared. I just wanted to share one last thought on that.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the ARC podcast. This episode is sponsored by the Philly Pretzel Factory of Marlton, located on North Maple Ave in Marlton, New Jersey.
Tell them Matt and Brandon sent you. We appreciate all your support. Thank you for listening, and back to the podcast.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing, man. Every path that you travel, right, it means something when you get to the end, right? So, you kind of shared on it a bunch already, like getting hurt, bouncing back, getting hurt, bouncing back, a car accident, bouncing back, right? Like, kind of walk us through, because, I'm a man of faith as well. And like when your faith gets tested multiple times, it's almost like you feel like you're getting picked on a little bit, right? So like, kind of walk us through like what it is like bouncing back, not only from injury, but, you get to another place and you're like, okay, here I go. And, before you even throw a pitch, it's something happens. That's a freak accident, right? Like kind of walk us through how you bounce back and what those motivations are at each step of the way to kind of come back from those injuries.
Yeah. I'm really grateful that like my mind didn't race with the accident one. I'll tell you what, I was sitting in the car and like, I think I'm going to lose my leg. I was trapped in the van for 45 minutes. So they had to get like the jaws of life, cut me out. Like, I don't know if you guys can share pictures on this podcast or not, but like I could send you a picture, like just to show like what it looked like. I mean, I was in the passenger seat and the entire dashboard had like hit my leg and I was trapped. I couldn't move. And so I'm sitting there with a dashboard on my leg for 45 minutes, and I'm going back and forth between literally like from praying to being like, oh, I'm going to lose my leg. Praying, like, I'm going to lose my leg. And it's just this back and forth of like, what is going on right now? And I have to admit, though, that like I'm extremely grateful because when my mind went there and my mind also went to the fact that like I saw my life flash before my eyes, I was super grateful that within a week it was like, all right, you know what? I've got a leg. I was told by the doctor I'm going to play baseball in 6 months, and like, let's make this happen. You know what I mean? And so like the rehab process and the training process was not easy. I will actually admit, to answer your question even more, I go on these tangents, but to answer your question even more, where it really hit me was my first year in pro ball, because the rehab process, it was hard. It was hard to get through. I mean, it's not fun to learn how to walk again and to learn how to throw again and to put the strength. But I'll tell you what was really frustrating was when I went back on the mound, and quite honestly, I wasn't ready in the sense that like I wasn't competing at the same level that I was, but they had to get me out there to be able to develop.
Right.
So I went onto the field and I pitched and I went from low A to high A. So high A was difficult. It was challenging, and the experience was quite humbling because I had gone from, this like high of train, like of baseball, like of where the last time I had played, I dominated. Like again, like I said earlier, I don't know what happened. Like I'm not saying like, oh, I'm the best pitcher in the world, but for 2 weeks I was the best pitcher in the world, and I have I don't know. I was more like So I got to high A with that being my last experience. And then all of a sudden, it was like, you're not that anymore. In fact, you're not even that same pitcher anymore. So even if like, it's not because these guys are better, which they're better, they're good hitters, but it's not because they're better. It's because you're simply worse. Like you're just coming off a broken leg. And I think it returns me back to the experiences that I had in 2018, not from the not from the performance anxiety side, but from the preparation side. Yeah, because again, I was on the mound, and this is the reality, and this is one of the things that you do have to battle with that's hard. I wasn't prepared in the same way that I was in 2018, whenever before that. But I knew I had to still go out there and compete and learn, and that's one of the things that you learn in the minor leagues. Is sometimes it's not about the performance, but it can feel so much about the performance. It's like I had to learn that I was going to learn through failure, and there was a lot of battling of like, again, why am I doing this? What's going on? Let me just get to the off season so that I can train. But I'm better for it now. Like I really believe that it taught me a lot of like what it means to fail at the professional level. I'm really grateful. Like if you go look at my numbers, there's not a lot of free agent signs that make it through those like that kind of season. But I'm really grateful that the Angels stuck with me through that. I went back to low A the next year. I actually went to extended spring training the next year, which if you don't know, like extended spring training is basically where more or less they keep the guys that are on the chopping block. It's like, when spot opens, like we'll throw you there, but right now you're not really like in our plans. Okay, fair enough. I didn't have a good year. But I walked in and I said, I walked into my coach's or our player development office when they told me, and there were 5 or 6 coaches there, and I remember saying to them, I said, whatever we got to do, like, I'm here to do it. I said, if you want me throwing 96, then let's figure out how to throw 96. If you want me doing something, we're going to learn a new pitch, then like let's learn a new pitch. I said, but if I'm going to be here in Arizona, like we're going to do something to get better. I said, because one thing I know, and I don't mean this the wrong way, there's a lot of guys that I love baseball. There's a lot of guys where like baseball is like the main thing that they're passionate about. They're not married. I don't have kids, but like they don't have kids. That like baseball's the world, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I was like, I'm not staying in Arizona or playing in low A for the rest of my life. Like my goal is like to make it to the big leagues. And I said, we're going to do what it takes. Mm-hmm. So I stayed in extended, and for a couple of weeks we trained. And I remember I was really frustrated, had a conversation with my agent, and I was just like, man, this is really like ticks me off. Like I don't know what to even think about baseball. Like what's the point of this? He's like, just stay the course, like keep the faith, like stay the course. And so I did. I went out to low A, I had success, and I got back up to high A that year. And I didn't have success. And I was like, man, like what is going on? The draft was coming up. Draft was around the corner. And the draft time is when a lot of guys get released. And again, 2021 Hayden should speak to 2023 or 2022 Hayden and be like, Hayden, like it's not going to go the way you planned.
Right.
That's why I need to speak to the future me. Because I was very stressed out about getting released. I was very stressed out putting like every performance like, oh man, like is today the day they're going to call me into the coach's office and say you're done? Like part of me was like, like I wouldn't be too upset. I get to go home. But like, no, I was going to be very upset. It was like me trying to rationalize those thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I just remember having conversations with one of the coaches, the pitching coach that I've been with now for 3 years. And he just understood me. He goes, like, I'm going to say this to you. I didn't get released. This was like a week after like a lot of like cuts happened. He goes, I appreciate his vulnerability. I would imagine they don't do this with most players. I would hope they don't. Because I'm going to be honest with you. Like your name was like on the chopping block. He said, but they're giving, basically he was like, there's a lot of guys here that are fighting for you and they're giving you a second chance. Just go be you. Like, just go be you. Like, don't put that pressure on yourself. Like, just take it as like basically a second chance, not in a bad way, but like, just go perform or not even perform. Just go be you. Like, just go pitch. And, it's funny because if we think about a lot of what I've said in my career, performance anxiety, like second chance, like with sports psychologists, like being able to like kind of rebound from that, COVID, like getting injured, second chance to like have another year, right? Like breaking my leg and thinking literally I'm going to lose my leg, and then I get a second chance like to play baseball, and then here's again like this is coming up again. It's like you have a second chance. And the last 2 months of that year was like 2021 Hayden all over again. I think it was just like this, like take the burden off my shoulders. Let's just go big. So I had a ton of success for about a month. Actually, you know what it was? I look back on it. I had like a good week. It was like an okay week in high A. And they needed a spot start or just a spot innings in AAA. So I got called up to AAA out of high A. This guy like was okay in high A. And I went up there and I had success. Like I had relative success.
Yeah.
And I went back down to high A. I was there for a week. I went back down to high A and I said, you know what? If I can compete against those guys, like this shouldn't even be a competition. Just have that again. It goes back to that confidence of again. I just learned it from like the experience of just like, you know what, Hayden, you have psyched yourself out about this game. You've psyched yourself out and not believed in yourself. And when you just showed yourself when you were in AAA what you're capable of doing, bring that back and put it here at high A. And that's what I did for like 2 weeks. It was I don't know what happened. I had one outing where I threw 3 innings and had like 14 swing and misses. I don't think I've had 14 swing and misses in my career since. Not even in a game. And it was like, to go back to what you had asked, Matt, it was second chances, right? And every time the second chance came off, it was like the burden off my shoulders. And that's one thing that I need to constantly remember is like, Hayden, don't carry the weight of like performance and decision making. That's not up to you. What's up to you is like the effort that you put in and the conviction that you have, and everything else will take care of itself. You'll either make it, you won't make it. You don't control those things. Just put the work in, see where it takes you, and just kind of let the path play out. So, quick story. I mean, I ended up going to Double A, finished that year in Double A, had success in Double A, and then next year I went to big league spring training. So I had gone from extended spring training for a month to low A for about a week, 2 weeks, to high A for about 3 months, up to Triple A for 1 week, back to high A, then finished the year in Double A, and then started the next year in big league spring training. So I'd gone from basically like this fringe guy to like, hey, you're somebody that we care about, and like, I'll fix my quote there because I believe that they actually care deeply about us outside of baseball. But you know what I mean in regards to like, hey, you know, you're somebody we're keeping an eye on who can provide for this team at the big league. So I don't know, second chances, man, and like just taking the burden off your shoulders and recognizing that like all you can be is you. Don't try to be anything more. Don't try to be anything less. It's like all you can be is you, and be confident in that. And like that's who you're created to be. It's the gifts you've been given. It's the talents you've been given, and like just nurture those and take care of those. And at the end of the day, be a good friend, good teammate, and work your butt off and make the most of your career. You know. So second chances, make the most of it, take the burden off, and just like have fun. I don't know.
I love that. Well, so kind of push that a little further, right? So like talking about like the burdens and like getting back to having fun and like realizing that like I got a second chance, I'm just going to make the most of it, right? I'm just going to go out and compete. Is there anything you do now, or is there something that, you know, you're working on doing as you kind of move forward to kind of have that in your head kind of on a daily basis, like performing, you know, going from Double A to Triple A, and, you know, soon enough here, you know, going into the major leagues, right? Like, how are you going to go about your daily and just realize that, like, hey, I am who I am. I'm here for a reason. If something bad happens, it happens. If something good happens, it happens. How are you going to deal with it moving forward?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time this offseason, and I'm really grateful for my wife. I'm really grateful for my pastor. He's the Phillies chaplain, so it's really sweet to be able to talk to him just to understand like the perspective. He gets it, you know. I spent a lot of time reflecting on my last season. I know we didn't get into the last season very much. Gosh, that's like a second chance too. There's so much I could talk about in pro ball. But talked about it a little bit, right? I had a 1 ERA for like 3 months, and then the last 3 months of the year were so bad that I was like, it wasn't even that bad, but I blew it out of proportion and was like, I think it was bad. That I was like, what am I even doing? But I realized again that it was a lot about me. It was a lot about my success, and that's where my joy came from. And that's where, when those things kind of went downhill, how do we balance those things? So this off season, I really, I spent a lot of time reflecting, and I just realized that, you know, my purpose in my life, I really believe, is to bring glory to God, and like that is going to be the same no matter what I do, whether it's on a baseball field, whether it's where I'm working, whether it's when I'm 26 years old, or if I'm, you know, 65 years old. That's to me the goal of my life, the purpose of my life. And I think a lot of times in baseball, it can be like, I'm trying to bring the glory to myself. And I don't think we're meant to carry that, because when things fail, it's like, how do you carry that? You know what I mean? When things don't go the way you want, like, how do you carry that on your shoulders of like, I wanted this, like I wanted the attention, I wanted these things, I wanted to get called up. My bank account wanted me to get called up. Like, like when that thing doesn't happen, like, you know, and you've had that perspective of like kind of trying to put the glory on yourself. All of a sudden, you hear fans like booing at you, like when you're not doing well, and you're like, oh gosh, like. But like, I really believe this. Like, God's not booing at you. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what I believe. And I think to answer your question, I have to remind myself of that daily. But I see it most in the people around me. And I think that's because, like, when I think about like giving glory to God, it's like really caring deeply and loving the people around me and my teammates. And I think honestly, like, I mean this like so sincerely, that like me in my faith and as a Christian, it's all about the guys around me, and like the performance and all of those things is like, I don't want to say it's second, because it's still important. Like, even in those things, like I feel like I can bring, I just experience so much joy. But like, we are people, I really believe this, we are people that desire to be loved. And like, the people that are around us are the people that are going to love us. And again, it goes back to what I had said, that like, It doesn't matter on our performance again. But what I just realized was that like these are the people that I have to care about because these are the people that are in my life. And it's not even like it's not like it's a chore. It's like, I mean, I really do deeply love these people, but when I get so focused on self, it's like I don't see the guys around me for who they are. So to answer your question, it's like I've spent so much more time with guys, spent so much more time in conversation.
Yeah.
Last year I was really big on I played a lot of chess. I have an addictive personality. I love games, and like so last year it was chess. And so I spent the entire, it's not a bad thing, but I spent the
Yeah.
Right.
occasionally, and like I don't even have like this part of me that's so important. I don't even have that like next to me for the entire year. It's like, but I can still find something like that in the guys around me. So to really care for the guys around me and to be cared for by the guys around me. But in order to be cared for, it's like you have to open yourself up for that. So that's like kind of answer your question. It's like I really think that my performance on the field almost will take care of itself if like your performance per se in the clubhouse is your focus. Because you take that weight, again, it goes back to that burden, it goes back to the weight. You take that weight off your shoulders and you're like, you know what? Like I care about the guys next to me, and if that's the thing that is most important to me, I've done everything I can to take care of the performance on the field. It's whatever happens, happens. Again, whatever happens, happens.
No, I love that. And honestly, I love the analogy. Like if I care for them, like the performance just takes care of itself. It's funny how human nature is, and it's just funny how like teams and units kind of work together. We go back to it. We talk about this all the time. It's like a college coaching staff. Well, if your room's messy, your grades are probably not good. If your grades probably are not good, you're probably not being great to your family, your significant other. Like you're stressed about other things. So how do you think it's going to translate when you actually get to play the game that you want to play and you want to get results in? Because that little bit of adversity hits, and now you got four things. Your relationship, your room's messy, your grades are bad, and you're hitting 200, right? So now it's like you don't even want to be around the field anymore, man. And, I think you said something that's super key there. Like, you walk this faith, right? Like you're a walking testament, and like the better you treat others and the more you put into your craft, the better everything just gets. It just raises the floor for everything. But it also allows people that might not get to know Hayden, right? Like it might allow a little kid, he's watching you in spring training, he hears your story and he's like, wow. Or maybe it affects the high schooler that, blows his UCL. He hears your story. He's like, I need to keep this going. Maybe it affects the next college guy at St. Joe's, the next person at UCLA that's pitching, out there. Like it's just something that, the better you live your life, the more impact you have on people. And, your vehicle's baseball, right? Like you're doing it through baseball, and it just allows everything else to kind of take care of itself, man. I think that's super awesome. That's great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's that's the dream. Like that's what I hope. I will answer another thought that popped in my head. Season gets long. There's a lot of people asking for autographs. There's a lot of kids asking for baseballs, and sometimes it's easy to like just tune it all out and be like, I'm just putting my head down, walking out to the bullpen and things like that. But you know what? I really find, and one of the things that I want to do a better job of this year is you really find the meaning and you really understand kind of the influence you have when you open yourself up to those things. You try to just to be a positive influence on people around you. So like, listen, I can't give away every single ball that the Angels have. Like sorry, this goes viral, right? And sorry, all the kids are like, hey, give me a ball. Like, even just like autographs, like making it a point to like care for the kids that are there. Like I was in their shoes one day, like or like when I was younger, and like would have done anything for an autograph from a minor league baseball player.
Yeah,
and so like I think the more, again, it goes back to the more that we serve like others, even in the small things, like signing autographs and just having a conversation. It's just like I think it gives us a greater perspective than just playing the game and just focusing on results. Yeah, so and I've learned that a lot from like other guys, and that's what I'm so grateful for. Is like exactly what you're saying, Matt. It's like I've learned these things from other people's experiences and in my own as well. But like I've been so grateful to be around the AAA clubhouse is fun to be around because there are guys with stories upon stories of experience. and just so much to learn from. Not to say that the other clubhouses aren't fun to be around. We've all been coming up through it together, really. But it's like it's in AAA where you start to see like the vets that are there, and I've gotten to meet some cool people in my short. I've only played 3 weeks maybe in AAA, but in my short time there, it's like I've gotten to have some really awesome conversations and meet some really awesome people. And then we have an entire coaching staff that's been through it and experienced it, and to learn from them. Yeah, so I'm grateful that I've been able to learn from them. I hope that my story and experiences are able to, inspire other people and encourage them. I know it's weird to say, like, it's almost like I look back on it and like I'm so grateful for a lot of those like failures and things like that. Like, it's inspired myself for now, and I think I have to constantly be learning. And I think that's like, yeah, I think it's like it's a constant learning, from our experiences in the past. Because the last thing I'll say on this is you don't even realize it in the moment. So like last year, I had no idea what my mind was going through until I took the time this offseason to reflect on it. Right. So like I'm so grateful that like I'm able to learn from those experiences.
Yeah.
But you have to sit with them. Like you have to take the time to reflect on them. Because if I just look at last season, I say it's a wash. I didn't make it to the big leagues. It's a wash. It's like, well, what'd you learn from that? You learned absolutely nothing. You're going to go back and do it again. Mm-hmm. And then here's the funny thing is like I might go back and do it again performance-wise, but I pray that I don't go back and do it again mental-wise, right? Yeah. So like, I might have a 1 ERA for the first 3 months of the year, and then the last 3 months of the year I have a 6. Like it could happen again, but what I refuse to allow to happen, or I at least am going to be battling, is the way that my mind tumbled during that season.
Right.
And I think as pitchers, as baseball players, as athletes, the most important tool you can have is what you just said, is looking at those failures and making them lessons and learning from them. Because I mean, once you can get to the point where you fail and you're not excited that you failed, but you go, okay, I failed. Now what? Now what do I do from here? There's a certain level of maturity and pride where I can overcome this. And you're almost looking forward to it to a certain extent. Obviously, success is always makes you feel a little bit better in the moment than failures do. But what's going to make you grow? It's the failures. And like you just said, mentally, that's going to go beyond baseball, whether that's working after baseball, whether that's being a husband, a father, whatever it's going to be, right? It's the takeaways that you get from failure. And you brought up too, right, that you had some impacts within the Angels organization so far while you've been there, and people that have kind of showed you some of the ropes and maybe how they go about their business, how they handle their mental prep. Can you give us either some examples or like some names of guys that you've been around that have given you like some impactful lessons that you've learned and you've been able to like carry over into your own game?
Yeah. The one that comes to mind first is Adam Simber. Played a long time in the big leagues. Just retired last year, but it was a special 2 weeks. I spent 2 weeks with him at the end of the year, connected with him. His experience was extremely similar to mine. He got left in extended spring training 1 year, and then the next year went to big league camp and broke camp with the team. If I'm remembering that correctly, but I do believe he went to big league camp. And I think he broke camp with the team. But the other funny thing is the reason he was left in extended spring training was because he couldn't get lefties out. And it's like that's me. Like I'm a sinker baller, right-handed sinker baller who struggles to get lefties out. Like you put a righty up there, I feel great, but a lefty, it's like I struggle with it. And so like it was crazy, just the conversations that we had, and just some of the experiences that he had, and like considered giving it up at certain points. Like, what's the purpose of this? What's the point? A guy that really like found his faith in those struggles too, like connected on that, and to see, after he basically was like, you think it's almost over. Like you were close to getting released, you were close to hanging it up, and the next thing you know, correct. The internet can tell me, but the next thing you know is like he was 7 years in the big leagues, something like 7 years of service time, something like that.
Sounds about right.
Basically, like I don't even know where the time went. Like you just keep going and do it. Like you keep doing it, and it was never like it was never like, all right, like I'm the best pitcher on the universe. Like I'm going to be in the big leagues forever. Like, you know what I mean? Like this was a unique pitcher, right? Like that last year spent time in the big leagues, and for the first half of the year had a ton of success before getting injured. throwing 85 submarine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is a guy who, if you look at the metrics and things like all of that, the analytics side of the game, like people would have been like, oh, he stands no chance. But he proved you wrong. Like, what are you going to say now? Like, you know, analytics, and I'm a big analytics guy, but but he just shared some really great wisdom in regards to how he has had his mentality. I believe he has 2 kids, and just the care for his kids, the family that he gets to be with, and like, you know, when again, like, he retired last year, and the fact that he was able to go into retirement and just be so joyful at his career, but also the fact that now, like, I'm hanging it up and I get to go be with my family and be the father I've always wanted to be. Not that you can't do that while you're playing. It just obviously looks a little bit different, and it's hard.
Of course.
But he gets to go spend more and more time with his kids, and like, I think just keeping that in perspective was like, that's awesome. Like, so he's one. We have a handful of coaches.
Yeah.
A handful of coaches that I could list off. Like Doug Henry is the one that I've been with for a handful of years. Played a lot of years in the big leagues. Eddie Guardado is a fun one. I get to talk to a lot. Just an awesome personality.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation 2 weeks ago with Chris Carpenter, which was like incredible. He's been really influential, like, mentally, and some of his experiences. I won't do his story justice if I try to share that. He's been through it and came out the other side with an unbelievable career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Chris has been extremely, you know, helpful and encouraging. Man, the list could go on with guys. Even in AAA, just to get to watch guys go about their business and carry themselves. I was only there for a short time, but I was with Jonathan Holder for a little bit, who has several years of big league time. I mean, I don't know. Like, Simber, I would say Simber was like the most impactful, like, conversations that I had. As far as guys that have just been constantly, like, there, or guys that I've been able to really just watch them go about their business and say, man, they go about it the right way. There's been a handful of those. Yeah, Simber, and then those coaches that I mentioned, they've been extremely influential.
And that, I mean, that's really important in being in that organization and having those people to, you know, learn from and bounce ideas off of. Like, that's invaluable. So that's really cool. But Hayden, do you know what the law of detachment is by chance?
I've heard of it, but I don't. Share.
Okay, so it's from the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, which is a book, and basically the law of detachment is, if you want something to succeed, if you want something to happen for you, you have to remove your attachment from that situation. So, like, in your instance, right, going to the big leagues, you have to lose your emotional attachment to making it to the big leagues, right? So you haven't come out and said it directly, but with a lot of the things that you've said, right, you have a lot of different passions. You have a wife who you've been with since your freshman year of college. Like you said, you have interest outside of baseball. So from my perspective and from Matt's perspective, right, when we got out of college, our whole thing was, let's go play indie ball. We went to numerous tryouts, got a lot of no's, got a lot of maybes, got an almost yes. Like, there were a lot of just like yes, no. But I felt like Matt and I lived and died by baseball at that time period. Like, I had a long-term girlfriend. I've been with my wife now since my senior year of high school, so also long-term relationships. But same thing, like, my wife at the time was still in college. I was living at home. Matt was at home, and we were just, every day was baseball. I'd go home after I threw a bullpen. I'm looking at video. I'm looking at Instagram videos. How do I get better? How do I get better? You're so caught up in this thing that, like, you don't even realize how crazy your mind's going, right? Where you do need those things that help you detach. And then, of course, like, spending time with my wife, amazing. You know, hanging out with your friends, amazing. That's the things that you really need to incorporate and have. So how important for you has it been with your success and, you know, not taking yourself too seriously at times, to have, you know, interests outside of baseball, having your wife, having, you know, all those other things that we kind of just listed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's one of the things that I reflect on over the last year. The last year is that like I could be wrong. I'd be curious what the book talks about this if it even touches on it. There's a difference between I would imagine there's a difference between masking and attachment level to these things.
Yeah,
So like
definitely.
I spent a lot of time doing these things that I cared about, but I also, as soon as those things weren't on, it was like my brain was on baseball. And
Yeah,
that's one of the things that I'm trying to like actually try to do a little bit less this year. I have, but when I think about those second chances, when I think about the times where I've had the most success, it has been when like not everything was baseball, baseball, baseball. So like the indie ball is a perfect example, like or more like the draft league. Like I played, like I did what I had to do for like the games, but there was a lot going on at that time. Like it was the middle of a summer that I wasn't sure that like I was gonna, um, again, I wasn't gonna play after that summer. So like spent time with my wife, spent time with like her family. Like we were done with college, so nothing else was like going on. Like we were just able to all spend time together, and so there was a lot more. I think that was like the experience, like the law of detachment. Now I think that I have that um, in other like I experienced that in the seasons, but it's something that I really want to make sure that I'm trying to do this year, and I feel like actually this spring has kind of been that, and it's been enjoyable for me. Like it
yeah,
just makes the game more enjoyable. Um, so like yeah, like spending the time with the guys, spending the time with my wife, whether it's
yeah,
talking to my wife right now, like those things, I think it helps you put everything into perspective. Like you know what I mean? It just helps you put everything into perspective. Because when I'm sitting there waiting for my data to be released and waiting for the videos to be put up, so that I struck this guy out, but if the pitch wasn't good enough, like then I know, like then that wasn't enough for me. And so nothing was ever good enough. Like nothing was ever good enough. Like if I dotted a sinker, but it had 10 vert instead of 4 vert, I was criticizing it. And I still do it. I'll admit, like I'll
of
probably still do
course.
it this year. But I just again, I think it goes back to like I was so focused on making my plan and my goals happen in my timeline, and that was like, if I don't have a perfect outing, like I'm not getting called up. You know, if I don't have a perfect, well, I struck 3 guys, or I didn't. Well, that doesn't really happen. I don't strike a lot of guys out, but I was gonna say if I struck 3 guys out, like I get a lot of ground balls, but. Um, no, if you know, like it was just like if I didn't have the perfect outing, then like I don't know if I'm getting called up. And even to the point, like last year when they called me up to AAA, I wasn't having success in AA, and I'm like, why are they waiting until now to call me up? Like, why are they waiting until I'm not having success? And it's like rather than just like, who cares? Like go have fun, like go compete. You know, um, I was like, yeah, because in my head I was like, oh, like I was so attached. I was so attached. I was very much like, oh, I haven't had success. Now I'm going up to a higher level. Like, what's going to happen? Like, blah, blah, blah. And you know what's funny? Is the last game of the season in AAA was probably the experience where I had the law of detachment. I knew the season was over. I got called into the office 2 hours before the game, said your spot's starting today. Basically, we have 5 relievers. You need to go as long as you can. I'd thrown 3 innings max the entire year. I'd thrown 45, 50 pitches max. And I went out there and I threw 5 innings, 65 pitches, gave up 1 run in AAA. And it was
Awesome.
just like, how did that just happen? Like, honestly, I haven't been pitching well. Like, nothing's been like going the way that I desire it, because it was the last game of the season. I had no expectations. They had no expectation. I didn't feel any expectations from them, because it was like your spot starting out of nowhere and it's the last game of the year. Go do it, you know? So to answer your question, it's just like, yeah, I think I even realized every single year, it's like I realized that importance of like the law of detachment even more. And it's something that I want to put into practice rather than just masking it with some of these like other passions, like going home and playing chess so I don't think about baseball. Like,
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
it's helpful, but like don't just mask it. Like also learn that like all of these things have like their places, you know?
Completely agree. Yeah, that's a really good point about the masking, because right, people can say they're detaching and then they're, playing video games, but then all of a sudden like they're screaming on the headset at their friend, their buddy, that's like, okay, clearly you have some unresolved anger about something. Like, they're not really detached from it. And I think that was a good point. I never really thought about it like that, but that's a good point. And going into that, I think a useful tool that I learned my senior year of college by a guy named Scotty Kelly, who was he was a graduate that played indie ball. He played for like the Somerset Patriots. He's playing for Team Ireland in the World Baseball Classic, actually, coming up. He told me, and at this time I don't think it was a thing, but it's called the alter ego effect. And I'm sure people have brought it up, mentioned it all the time. But the way he described it was like, okay, you off the field are Brandon. Like, right? Great. You have friends. You're buddies with all your teammates. Great. On the field, you're Bizak, which is my nickname. Everyone called me. It's like, on the field, you're Bizak. And those two people don't mix. And it's like, okay. It's like there's a separation there, right? On the field, you're this competitive. You should be a competitive nut, is like the way he described it. Like, you go out there, you give it your all every single day. But when you leave the field, right, you're Brandon. Go enjoy being Brandon, right? Go spend time with your girlfriend. Go spend time with your friends. Go do things that you enjoy, like you said, that aren't masking baseball, that you actually want to go do, that actually will take your mind off of things. At the time, I was like, oh, wow, this is like a really powerful thing. I think someone, I forget, Todd Herman, that's the name. He wrote a book called The Alter Ego Effect. But Matt talked about it when he was presenting at the ABCA convention, where he goes and puts on his uniform to present, and it's like Clark Kent and Superman, right? He goes, puts on his uniform, he's like, I'm ready to present now, I'm ready to go. But then once the uniform's off and he's out of that, it's like, all right, that's done, that's over with. Now I'm back to Matt, and I can just do my thing. So I feel like that was a good point about masking versus like is actually being detached from, you know, your attachment to baseball.
That's good. Yeah. No, I like that a lot. I'm learning something. I need to put it. Give me a nickname. Actually, like I need a nickname that I can the field Hayden.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. There's like a George Kittle does it. If you've ever seen his on-field personality, he is claimed as like the Joker.
Yeah.
So like, if you've seen him like pancake people and block, he's just like hysterically laughing in their face. That's like intentional because he's like convincing himself he's like a different being. And then off the field, he's George and he can do whatever he wants. But on the field, man, he's an animal and he's going to be a competitor. But it's like a cool little concept, I feel like. And I feel like a lot of people can use it because there is a separation you need from on the field and off the field.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So we usually go and end each show with the last question being, what's next and what are your major goals, right? Now we know, you know, obviously the goal is to make it and play at the major leagues, right? So you can start with that and then anything else that you kind of have underneath that, whether it's something on the field in your profession or maybe it could be off the field as well.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, there's the goal of like making it. There's the goal of making it to the major leagues. I think my biggest goal, though, is like I shared earlier, is just like to really just connect and care for and love the guys that I'm with this year. And I just think that if my mind, obviously, yeah, like I said, if I want to make it, but like if my mind's not so focused on that, I just think it takes a lot of the burdens off, like, and recognize that like there's people around you to really care for, and again, like I said before, to be cared for, like I can be cared for by them, but it's only if you open yourself up to it. So yeah, baseball wise, you know, I'm always trying to throw 100. I've hit 96. Yeah. There's still 4 miles an hour to go, but
love that.
You know, like throw a sweeper in the strike zone. That would be helpful. You know, like I just throw it 0-2. I hope they swing, but if I could just land it in the strike zone, you know, some smaller goals. But yeah, I know it sounds silly or like it sounds so simple or maybe it's not even as tangible, but I just really want to do a much better job this year with the guys. I think the other thing is one of those addictive personalities that I'm trying to make happen this year is like with reading. We'll see. I'm not a big reader, but like I feel like as I've read more over the last, like in 2025, I've read more. I've learned so much.
Yeah.
And you learn so much from the perspectives that other people have. And you know, you can learn. I learned a lot from chess last year. I learned a lot. But like I also think that like some of the applications were good, like to real life, and then some of them are just to chess. So, I think with reading, like you learn a lot, and I think there's a lot of application to it. Yeah, I have a lot of passions. You know, Matt, obviously we get the opportunity to work with the Monarchs, and like we haven't even touched on any of that today, which has been like that's like such a dream come true of mine. I've always wanted see baseball flourish in the younger generations, as well as be able to share my stories and share, hopefully care for younger kids the way that I was cared for and mentored by people that were older than me when I was in high school and college, and even till today. Like, I've really been so appreciative for the people that have invested time into me from the time I was young. My parents, some of my teachers in high school, some like best friends in college, and I really desire to be able to grow the game of baseball in Philly. See some absolute studs come out on the mound, like in the Philly public leagues and in the private, like the Catholic League and like things like that. Like, there's nothing that makes me more happy than like getting a text about a guy just dominating. Like, that's just like, yes, that's what I want to hear. Like, you do it. Or like, even just like, when they get to commit to college, like, and to know that those kids have put the work in to get committed and to see, their dream of playing professional or not playing college baseball come true. But to also know that not only are they just going there to play baseball, because like they might be excited about like going to play college baseball, but it's almost like me celebrating the fact that like you're about to learn so much from your experience. Not just like, oh, sick, like you're great. And I hope you do not have the same experience I did in college baseball. More than likely you're gonna have some parallels, and like you're gonna learn yourself through that, So that's what's next. It's a dream of mine, like to be able to help those guys out whatever way I can. And so whatever baseball plays, however long I play baseball, another dream that I have is, to spend my off seasons and spend more time like seeing these kids develop into absolute studs, and just have a great time doing it. Like we try to have so much fun with the Monarchs, and like that's the goal. And so I think very simple. To me, it's all about the people that are around us. It really is. How well can we care for them? Because I think we really were. We were made as people to like serve others. There's nothing like you find more joy in than like being able to serve the people around you. That's a big goal. Man. That's a big goal. I don't want to just like. There's not like don't throw 100 miles an hour. Like, what's it look like? And that's me. That's as real as I can get about it. So.
That's awesome.
That's great. Yeah, that's great, man. I appreciate you coming on seriously. Like, really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're really busy. We both know that you're going to have immense success. I mean, just from the mindset that you have, again, like you said, results are there or not, you're going to keep persevering in that. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to continue to have success. I know you're going to make it to the big leagues. Now we'll just wait and see when that happens. Can't wait. I'm real excited for that. But now you have two big fans here. I mean, Matt knew you, but now you got a big fan in me. And again, I'll always be in your corner, always rooting for you. So really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to talk with us, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. It's been a blast. It's always fun to be able to reflect on things that I've experienced and hopefully be able to share a little bit of wisdom or experiences that I've had. Even share some of the stuff that I've learned from other guys. So, I'm grateful for you guys kind of giving me that place, and it's awesome to see what you guys are doing, and wish you guys the best of luck. I'm sure I'll stay in touch with you guys, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Definitely, man. I appreciate it.